So it's not that I'm someone who has the ability to just stick to something, right?
Mm.
I have to try and fail, try and fail, try and fail before it sticks, right?
Hmm.
But the resilience comes from being in love with the process and celebrating the little wins. When I was recruiting through COVID, right, and I knew deals were far away, deals are the ultimate goal, but they can be 6, 8, 12 weeks in between. So have to celebrate you celebrate every time a good candidate picks up, right? You mark that
Hmm.
down like, hey, my A plus candidate answered the phone. My A plus client responded to an email. I got all my metrics I needed for the day, right?
Right.
Again, earlier I mentioned keeping your head down, going step by step. That's part of the resilience because it's like, because I enjoy each step, which is maybe why it helps me focus on those steps, right? But celebrate the little wins.
Welcome back to the Everyday Innovation Podcast. Today, I have the unique pleasure of introducing a special guest. He's a former commercial and defense pilot who charted a course from the skies to the tech industry. Now he's a savvy recruiter and agency founder, as well as the driving force behind his own company, Pivotal Talent. And in addition to all of those impressive titles, he also happens to be my husband. Please welcome Adrian Divecha. I want to start with a couple warm up questions for you. I know this must be kind of interesting to be on your wife's podcast, but I'm so happy that you're here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jordan. I'm glad you invited me on. You've had a lot of interesting guests, so I'm excited to be here with you today.
You're ready to be the one that blows it up, right?
I am. I'm ready to be the one that makes you go viral. Let's get
Perfect.
a million
Perfect.
views.
I love that. I love that energy. So, first question that I want to ask just to get us going, I love to ask this to creators and entrepreneurs is what are you learning about or what are you reading right now?
So I'm actually going through two books actively. There may be, yeah, just two at the moment. So one of the books I'm reading is Angela Duckworth's Grit. And
Good.
so that's really just kind of, it's about, I want to say, like, if you summarize that, the power of one more, just
Mhm.
finding out what it is that drives certain people to be able to stay on course and achieve their goals, where certain people are deterred by obstacles, right? So that's really what Grit's about. And then I also just got this new book that I ordered the other day from one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's daily emails, but it's called "You Can't Screw This Up." And so, as you saw, part of my career was in fitness and nutrition. That's where we built the tech company. And so it's because throughout my life I struggled with my weight, my diet. So I'm just looking for easy answers on how to, keep balanced in all aspects of my life.
I love that. Truly, when you are an entrepreneur, it becomes something where you're creating that growth mindset in all areas of your life. So it doesn't just happen in your business, it starts to bleed into like your parenting, your weight loss, other aspects of your life, like you're reading more, you're spending more time with family, whatever that might be. So I love that you shared that. And I'm also going to pick from one of these cards here. I pre-selected a few just to make sure that they were somewhat close to where we're going with our conversation, but I'm going to just pick one now, shuffle it. Okay. Actually, this is a good one going into it. How would you define personal success for yourself? Doesn't have to be for anybody else,
Personal
just for you.
success. It's funny. I wish I had the conversation written down that I was having a couple months ago about how you define success and how it can how you define success can really determine how far you go. But in my mind, success is having the if I have the time and financial ability to spend that with my family versus the company I was building, I would think that personally I'd reach a level of success that I was trying to achieve. So, but yeah, success, I'm going to say I measure success in the amount of time I can buy back to spend with my family. The
I
more
love
time I
that.
have
I
with
think,
them, the more successful I feel.
yeah, I think In some way, it is resource based, right? So you're looking for potentially trading a lot of the resources that you gain through working to buy back the resource of time and the resource of energy. So that's a great answer. I love that. And it's great going into our conversation too, because I'm sure over time you've been experimenting and pivoting. You've actually had a lot of personal success in the careers that you've already chosen and taken over your life. Like me, you have had a non-linear path. And I want to talk about it a little bit. And you've really kind of found versions of success that have probably changed over time, and you've discovered new levels of what you care about over time too. So I want to talk about it a little bit for people who maybe are in a moment of pivoting. So I want to start with, a lot of people don't necessarily know that you were a pilot. So tell us a little bit about your experience kind of in the teaching and then moving into defense. Like, what have you learned? You don't have to go and necessarily detail the whole experience, but what did you take away from that? What did you love about it? And what are some things that you were like, okay, this hasn't either challenged me enough, or this hasn't, given me what I would define as personal success?
So while flight instructing was extremely rewarding on a personal level, financially, flight instructing, at least for another school where you were only being paid part of what was coming in, it was not financially feasible long term. But
Mm,
taking pilots from zero to commercial, knowing that a lot of them were international, be going home to South Korea or Japan or somewhere else, and then being able to start their professional aviation career, and you just help them reach a lifelong dream, that was extremely rewarding. And so I still to this day say that flight instruction was probably my favorite job because of that. It was one on
mm,
one. I worked with people. I got to help them. I provided a service. I provided a service that I was good at, one that I enjoyed, right? And it was reflected in the end level of my students.
right.
The reason I left instructing is that when you're in flying, your career is kind of like you start with single engine aircrafts and your goal is to go multi engine. The flight school I was at lost the multi-engine training aircraft they have, and I had a chance to start flying cargo for a UPS and FedEx subcontractor on these turboprop planes. So I moved over there, was flying cargo for a little bit, took me around. I got to go to the islands, Puerto Rico, St. Thomas, St.
Mm,
Croix, right? Visit all those places when I was living in Puerto Rico for a while. Then I got sent up to Indiana for the winter, got to fly deep dish pizza that got shipped to us to Indiana and had to be overnight, somewhere else, down to Louisville, where UPS would then take it to someone. But flew cargo for a little bit. Again, really enjoyed the flying and the planes itself, but the line flying, the politics of working in a company like that,
mm,
it felt, it felt like you're just a tool that could be thrown away when they were done with it or used when they needed it, but just didn't have that same reward at the end of it. It was a better paycheck, it was a bigger plane, but something was missing. I also wanted to, so when I was flight instructor, I was in California. Uh, Flying cargo took me out of California, but almost as soon as I left California, I knew I wanted to go back. My brothers were still out there. So that is when I got into government contracting with a contractor up in the high desert, and I started flying UAVs. So UAVs took me all over the country training, and then took me all over the world when I was deployed flying for them. And again, uh, great pay. I was able to buy back more of my time and spend more time with you when I was home, which again was one of those personal levels of success I'd been looking for. I knew I could keep going because I had an upward trajectory there. But again, something was missing, right? There
mm.
wasn't the service based kind of the service based reward that drives me. I've always liked helping people, and I almost felt that flying ISR was kind of counterintuitive. While I was helping one set of people, I was also potentially hurting another set of people. So it kind of canceled itself out.
Yeah.
And so when I left aviation, I knew I wanted to stay in a service related industry. I knew I wanted to do something to help people. And that's kind of where I got into the fitness and nutrition. I was currently on a path that had me close to sub 10% body fat. I've been doing this for years, and I kind of thought to myself that I want a chance to be able to help other people who struggle with this, right? And so my career path took me out of aviation into fitness and nutrition. And while this seems nonlinear, I want to compare this more to peeling an onion than a nonlinear career move, right? Because the first layer of the onion tells you something, the second layer tells you something, the third layer tells you something.
Mm.
The deeper you get, the more you cry, but you're uncovering the core part of the onion, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel that my nonlinear career moves are all geared towards getting to the service-based career that I'm looking for, or service-based
Right.
company agency that I'm looking for. So while they may look nonlinear, really they're just different layers of the onion, because the ultimate goal is still the same. So to the
Right.
outside observer, it looks different, but I've been driving towards that ultimate goal, trying to find what part of that is what I want to provide. And that's still where I'm going at. And that's really what brought me to recruiting, because on top of being able to buy back my time because of the financial success that you achieve, you also get to help hiring managers who will be extremely stressed out with the extra burden or extra work
Hmm.
they've had to take on to hire. You're helping people who may have been out of work and not getting a stable paycheck for several months, or someone who is very unhappy at a job, or someone who's about to get a great promotion and raise. And so at this point where I'm at is I'm getting that financial freedom to be able to buy my time back to spend with my family. And I'm getting to provide a service to people who need it and provide relief in a way that is rewarding to me. So I don't want to make it sound, we can change that. I don't want to make it sound like recruiting's all about me, but recruiting has given me a chance to take care of my family and to achieve that kind of desire I have to help others.
No, that absolutely makes sense. I think you're finding really the through line of everything that you're doing, which is really how most people should look at the projects and the experiences they take on as they see what are the core pieces that make sense. So obviously financial stability is always going to be something that's important, right? Because that is a resource. But then also having, you were saying that service level, and as we kind of move, and we can talk a little bit about that experience later, the one where we work together in a tech company, that level of continuing to provide service for people in different ways. And you really thrive in that one on one setting. So I think you found that out very early when you were doing the flight instruction, but it didn't have the financial piece for you. And now you found a place where you have that freedom, and you also have that ability to change that people's really trajectory one on one, whether it is somebody who is a client, whether as a candidate, whether it is somebody who's working with you or for you. You're able to guide them and really transform, their work experience, and that's incredibly huge, and that's a huge piece of somebody's life. So I think you've done a really great job of really peeling back the onion. That's an amazing metaphor. I'm obsessed with that. And I love the part that you said that you cry a little bit more at each part, because it's so true, because the further you get deeper down, the more you're really getting to the core of yourself and what
The
your
more you live
purpose
the
is.
role.
So it means more to you. It's not just a job, it's a purpose, it's an expression of you, right? I want to ask this because these are still pivots in a way, but they're pivoting toward something, right? What kind of advice would you give to, because you're seeing lots of pivots in people's lives. You're actually facilitating a lot of pivots. I mean, the name of your company is Pivotal Talent too. You're working with companies pivoting, you're working with candidates pivoting. Just because you just talked about your kind of pivotal journey, what's some advice that you would give to people who are exploring like a new pivot in their career, or maybe even a pivot in moving? You've moved so many different places. Do you have some advice in these sort of spots?
I do, especially with career changes. When I first changed, I followed a passion, and it was something that I enjoyed doing every day, but it was something I was doing for me. And when I'd made it a job and work, it had kind of stole some of the joy I was getting
Mm,
from it. So when you are making a career move, I do encourage you to explore your interests, but I don't encourage you to chase your passion as a career. Keep your passion for you
mm,
for after hours. Keep your hobbies for you after hours, so you have a place to decompress and let go,
mm,
right? And
mm-hmm.
don't make what you love your work, but you should like what you do. When you wake up in the morning, when you're making that switch, pick something that when you wake up, you enjoy doing. For example, when I started recruiting, I used to drive out from Burbank to Playa Vista, 23 miles to the west side from the valley. It took me 90 minutes going in the morning, sometimes 2.5 hours coming back at night. But I really enjoyed recruiting. And I'd wake up in the morning, and even though I had that 90-minute drive, I was excited to get to the office. I was
Mhm.
excited to get on the phone. I was excited to drive new opportunities and see what type of business we could develop. So when making that move, just do something you like. Do something you're okay doing every day, right? I
Right.
enjoy talking to people. I enjoy that one-on-one setting. So this is kind of something else I looked for, right? But then also make sure what you pick is going to help you reach your ultimate goal, right?
Mhm.
We spoke about personal success, and I define personal success as being able to buy back my time with my family. And through sales, recruiting, I was told I'd be able to do that. That you
Right.
have a chance to go out and earn your salary isn't dictated by the company; it's dictated by your effort, right?
Right.
So on top of being able to do something where I was helping people and something that I looked forward to, it was also considered because it gave me a chance to reach that personal success, right? So have what you're looking for, right? And look for something you like that aligns with that. And don't necessarily, if you can, don't waver on that, because you don't want to do 5 years of something else and constantly make these big changes. It has been tough. It hasn't been easy.
Mhm.
Down the line, it looks like it's been easier. I see the path clearer now, but the zigzagging was tough at first. And maybe if I could have dialed it in a little better, understood what I was looking for, I wouldn't have had to go so drastic, and I could have kind of come to this middle path, right? But
Yeah.
flying, I kind of knew what I was looking for. Nutrition, I kind of knew what I was looking for, but now in recruiting, I know. I understand
Right.
where I'm going with it. So, I'm finally moving in the right direction. That's, again, long story short, know what you want and do something you like. Save your passions for yourself after hours.
I like that take. I really do, because I have interviewed a lot of people who follow their passions on here, but a lot of them are multi-passionate, so they probably do fall under the level of like than maybe full on obsession. So for me personally, I think music was always something that I didn't really want to make into my work life. So I've taken aspects of things that I love about music or editing or any of that and taken it into different spaces to kind of protect that. And I think that is really special when you can make sure that you have those things that are passionate that you're not just monetizing all the time. And that's something that tends to happen a lot, especially with the audience that listens to this, which is a lot of creators and a lot of creatives, and that can be a trap too. Just because you're really amazing at something and you're really in love with it doesn't mean you have to monetize it or make it into a job.
And as far as the job, I love the recruiting and sales aspect, right?
Yeah.
I love coming into work. I love walking out from our house to my garage where my desk is, but I would never do sales after hours as like a side gig or side hustle for fun,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like I love it for work, but then I have other stuff I do in the evening for myself, right? But it kind of shows you that I still enjoy what I do for work, right? But it
Right.
isn't necessarily something that I grew up dreaming of as a kid.
It's kind of like finding that middle ground of it being this expressionate, passionate area where maybe you want to save that for a hobby or something where you can decompress, like you were saying, and not just going in for a paycheck, because I think that's not sustainable either. This is most sustainable route really is that kind of middle path of you really loving something, but you're okay stepping away from it.
Example of how chasing your passion can lead to a job you hate is recently Nikola Jokic and both Draymond Green said that
Mm-hmm.
while they love basketball, they absolutely hate the job. And a lot of people are probably like, how can you hate playing professional sports? But the job isn't just playing basketball, right? The job is media, training,
Yeah.
nutrition, basketball, travel. So, just because you may be in love with one aspect of it doesn't mean you're going to love it as a job.
So speaking on that, for people, let's say, who are listening to this and looking for a job or an opportunity, let's say opportunity in the sense of they may not have a job, but they may have a potential client, right, that they're going to work with, and they're looking at that. How can we bring some of this knowledge into like the job search process or the gig search process, whatever the term might be that somebody's using, but they're looking for an opportunity and they're seeing if it's a match with a potential employer of some sort?
So first thing again is going back to understanding what you want. And
Mhm.
so, and kind of reverse engineering, right? You would reverse engineer your ideal situation. What what do you want? And then work back, right?
Mm.
Sometimes it's easier to work back and think about the steps coming from there than going forward, right? So I would reverse engineer what you want. And then once you're at the start, now you figure out a good definition, or you really define the product and service that you're going to provide or offer, and then you go and chase those specifically, right? Figure
Yeah.
out ultimately what you want, really define what you have and what you provide, and then go after it that way, because you want to niche it down. Not everyone, for example, in recruiting, there is global industries, right? But I'm not recruiting in every industry. I've
Right.
narrowed it down right now. I'm recruiting in finance and accounting and finance. And within that, I'm doing CPAs, tax managers and audit managers, tax associates and audit associates. There's a whole world of finance roles out there, but I've kind of narrowed it down to what I'm good at, what I enjoy, the people I like talking to, the clients I like talking to, and I'm just driving that, whether it's on your own or moving into a new career. Just effort, just effort.
Yeah.
It's keep your head down, keep going. Don't let yourself be easily deterred. You're going to come up against 100 what ifs every single day. Just
Yeah.
step by step, keep your head down, go step by step, no matter what it is.
So tell me a little bit about, because one of the qualities that I really admire about you, there's more than a couple, but there's definitely a couple that I feel like are really exceptional for you. And one of them is really your discipline and your tenacity when approaching a new opportunity, in that you will take the time and you will take the effort to put in the reps for it. That also goes for things that you do outside of work. I want, if you can, to talk a little bit about, you can give it in any context you want. You can talk about recruiting, but talk about putting like those numbers in, because I think a lot of us, we see these overnight successes, right? Or quote unquote overnight successes. And a lot of it is just a lot of showing up, a lot of emails, a lot of cold calls, a lot of all of this. And how do you keep yourself motivated through that?
So, the beginning of Grit talks about that almost exactly. That as humans, we like to believe that people have natural ability. It's easier
Mm,
for us to comprehend, it's easier for us to accept. We
right.
don't want to look at, say, a Michael Jordan or a LeBron James, or say like a Michael Phelps or an Usain Bolt, like these people have dominated, and think that, oh, they've got there through hard work. They've got there through reps and discipline and doing this every day for
Hmm.
10 plus years straight. They like to look at them and be like, oh, they must have been born with that ability. Then they
Right.
practiced a little and got better, but I couldn't actually get there because I wasn't born with the natural ability, right? And that's something that I used to think to myself, that that really was a limiting mindset I had before getting into aviation. And I think part of the discipline that I have came from my time as a pilot, because everything in aviation is planning, right?
Right.
Failing to plan is planning to fail when you're flying. If you don't know every single step along the way, from pre-flight to latching your plane down at the airport you're getting to after shutdown, there's going to be trouble along the way, right? And since then, that's kind of how I have, that's really when discipline took over in my life. And that's kind of the model that I've used moving forward. Again, maybe that's the whole reverse engineering part. I know the destination I'm going to. Now I draw the track distances, all of that, and measure it
Mm-hmm.
out. But even now in recruiting, when I'm getting on a call, with the client, I've done research before that call. I know what
Right.
they're looking for. I know about the company, and I'm going into this with all that information so I can listen to them, understand, and process as much as possible, right? I do the same with my nutrition going into the week, right? I even made an adjustment because instead of prepping the meals in the morning for that day, I've just started using a meal delivery service for lunch and dinner. So I'll make breakfast after my workout. I'll have my snack, but then I have lunch and dinner made. So those aren't going to take time out. That'll help with the process, help with the discipline of it, right? But before moving forward, I had signed up for this meal plan, right? Because I understood my goal. I thought about what am I going to need to really get back in shape after my back injury. And now I'm implementing those steps and putting them in path to be able to go there. But it all comes to that simple saying, failing to plan is planning to fail, right? In every
So how do
aspect of
you so
life.
what does it take for you? Because I think there definitely are people who will agree with you on that point and they will follow through on that point and they're ready to go. They'll plan their week, they'll plan everything, right? So they got part of the equation, and they've committed to it. But there is the follow through when things start to go awry, when clients are saying no, when you haven't gotten a deal in a little while, when the scale is going the opposite direction, even though you've been putting in the work. Where has that mindset come from for you, where you have the resilience to get through that and have the trust that it will go in the way that you hope to, that you plan to? Because I feel like even with your agency recruiting, when you were there, you were part of a very small group that really survived a tough time and then came out on the other side doing amazingly successfully well, but it took a lot of resilience to get through that. I just want to tap into your mindset, your process there, because I think it's something that's so special and so needed for people who are putting in the hard work, especially alone, especially without a team behind them to help them out.
So what I'm going to say when I start is going to sound extremely generic, but I'm going to go into it and explain it, right? Because it it really is simple. So it's not that I'm someone who has the ability to just stick to something, right?
Mm.
I have to try and fail, try and fail, try and fail before it sticks, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the resilience comes from being in love with the process and celebrating the little wins. When I was recruiting through COVID, right? And I knew deals were far away. Deals are the ultimate goal, but they can be 6, 8, 12 weeks in between. So have to celebrate you celebrate every time a good candidate picks up, right? You mark that
Mm-hmm.
down like, hey, my A plus candidate answered the phone. My A plus client responded to an email. I got all my metrics I needed for the day, right? There's,
Right.
again, earlier I mentioned keeping your head down, going step by step. That's part of the resilience because it's like, because I enjoy each step, which is maybe why it helps me focus on those steps, right? But celebrate the little wins because sometimes the process does take long and we overestimate how long it's going to take. We think, hey, we can go from 0 to 100 in 1 year, but really that's 5 years. And then all of a sudden we feel upset because we haven't got to the end by year one. But if you're
Right.
just enjoying the process, you're going to blow way past your goal because you're not going to be paying attention to the goal. You're going to get there and you're going to keep going.
Right. And you're
But
not going to get
enjoying the
the hit of it
steps,
just being the goal, right? Yeah.
it's more than just the goal. You know where you're going with the goal, but now you're rewarding yourself because you've reverse engineered the process and you're rewarding yourself with each micro goal along the way.
That's where we often align, is that we both love understanding the process, maybe in different ways from different lenses. But me with kind of the innovation space, understanding the creative process and the iteration process, and watching someone like you go through your own personal process, continue to refine it and to continue to do it. Because it's one thing to design a process, do it twice, and you're not going to get a lot of information from that. You're not going to get a lot of impact from that. But the more and more that you do it, you get to iterate and you get to create, something that aligns with you. So, what's interesting, just kind of looking at your particular process, I've seen a lot of changes just in how you approach your work going from agency to on your own. So, I wanted to see if you could chat with us a little bit about why And it's not to like badmouth the place there you were. It's more just kind of like in your own process, the way that you would approach things. What have you seen as changed going from agency to on your own?
And yeah, so like you said, not bad mouthing the agency I was at, because they gave me the opportunity of a lifetime. Love them. If I didn't have this entrepreneurial drive, I probably never would have left them. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They gave me a place to grow. They gave me somewhere that I was able to have upward trajectory, and I knew
Yeah.
I could keep achieving my goals. So the agency I came out of, great, right? Gave me skills, it taught me how to fish essentially. So nothing bad to say about them, but making the move, I've noticed that the agency, you have a few other people that you're recruiting for as well, right? I worked at a publicly traded company, so I'm recruiting for the shareholders. I'm recruiting for the executive board of the parent company that holds us. I'm recruiting for our VPs and directors who all get a piece of the pie. So
Mm-hmm.
the speed you need to go at is much more of a breakneck speed, right?
Right.
Now, you do that because you understand eventually you can get a bit more piece of the pie, right? So you're like, I'm okay doing that now because in the end I'll get up there. But when you come out on your own, you can turn it down about 25%. You don't have to go as breakneck, right? And you can still get the results that you're looking for. All right.
Right.
This year, financially, I haven't hit the goals I wanted because I've had a couple deals fall off. One after the SVB bank collapse, a offer was rescinded just because the company was in trouble. And then two, I let someone convince me they weren't going to take a counteroffer from their company and listened to it. I got happy, quote unquote, happy ears, heard what I want to hear, and I lost a deal there, which would have had me a little further, right? But, throughout the process, it has been fun. So, funny enough, one thing I've noticed since being out on my own is that when I send business development out through email and I send it to people towards the end of the day, I was getting a much higher response rate than any of the marketing, quote unquote, gurus on LinkedIn or anywhere else would tell you
Mm-hmm.
you would get for that. They're telling you do Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning between 6 and 9 a.m. or something. I'll send out 200 emails and get one response at that time. Where when I was sending them out at like 3 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Pacific across the country, I was getting at least 10 or 15 responses to every 100 emails sent. Right. So I found that being able to do business development after hours and even reach out to candidates after hours is a better way to start driving the business, right?
Right.
So what I've done is almost shifted where I start. So instead of going 8 to 5, I'm almost working 10 to 7, right? I have
Right.
a little
Right.
break in between there and split it up, but it's because that back half of the day really is very, very valuable for creating new connections. Now, when you work at a
Yeah.
company that you have to leave at 5, you really lose that window because a lot of people aren't necessarily just in LA when we had to commute. Maybe now it's not as bad, because people are working remote, but you're losing that window to contact people because you were commuting home, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now being able to work on my hours, I was just able to tweak my business development and candidate outreach and find that, hey, when I'm initiating them, 3 p.m. Pacific to 7 p.m. Pacific is the sweet spot. I get responses from the East Coast all the way up to 10 p.m. Eastern.
One of the things that I'm hearing is that you were able to have more agency over your process, being able to do stuff on your own, and then being able to innovate in a way so that, I mean, you would think that would almost not be common sense, but you're looking at the process of a hiring manager, of a client, of a candidate. Candidates are the best candidates probably are still employed. So they're still working. Why are they going to answer your call then? Clients, if they're
Exactly.
working, let's say they have a 9 to 5, right? That's when they typically run their business. Maybe they're working at all hours, really, but they don't really want to talk to anybody until their employees go home,
And
right? Or
now
starting to go home.
imagine a hiring manager who's still doing a job, has 100% of his day already, assigned out, has no time, but now he's been
Meetings, all of
told
that.
you need to go hire, which is its own job on its own.
Hmm.
Chances are he's doing that from 5 to 8 p.m. They're doing that 5 to 8 p.m. if they are doing it at all.
Right. Yeah. So you really are showing already just the kind of flexibility that you can have. And it's not just flexibility that, oh, I get to work whenever I want. And that's great because I get to spend time with my family or work out when I want or whatever. It's also, you get to look at your own process and say, what actually works for me personally? When do I work well? When do my clients want to actually speak to me? When do the candidates actually want to speak to me? That was a really great insight that you got from actually, again, going through your process many times, trying something new. And like you said you sent out 200, 100, 200, whatever many emails, and then you did it another time at different times. It's not like you're sending two emails and then trying to get an insight from it. You're putting in the work, you're putting in the volume, and then you're starting to find these pieces and putting it back into your process and saying, okay, perfect. Changing the schedule, doing this. Okay, this tool is working, that tool is not working, whatever that might be. One thing I also have noticed, the things I'm so impressed with you about are like your discipline, of course, and then also just your ability to make people feel seen and have that kind of one-on-one impact with people. And I just want to talk about relationship building a little bit because this is something I think a lot of people are very intimidated by when really they naturally do it well by building community, but maybe they get a little bit afraid when they're talking about sales or hiring or being hired for something, selling their service and being hired for an opportunity. I just want to talk to you a little bit about relationship building because I find your sales process is not salesy. You're just very genuine in what you do, but you still put in the work to make sure that you're talking to enough people. So I want to get your take on how you kind of build relationships with your clients, business development, your candidates throughout this process, and kind of what we can take away from that, in our own ventures.
Right. So I guess one of the keys to relationship building is just ask questions. That's one of them, right? But don't just ask questions to ask questions. Genuinely ask questions about what you're interested in about that person, right? Now, I know that's something like, okay, we're talking about that, and it's like the beginning of the sales process. So it's like, why are you genuinely interested in this person? Well,
Mm.
just because I'm beginning a sales process doesn't mean I can't start a relationship as well, right? A lot of
Right.
people do business with people that they enjoy spending time with or they like talking to, right? So again, that's why I do a little bit of research on them in the beginning. So I have questions to see if there's things that, are piquing my interest in asking questions. And but yeah, it's the relationship building comes back to that personal level because even though it's business, there's still the personal situation involved. You're gonna get to the business part of the call, right? You are. Everyone,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's the candidate or the client, the call is going to progress there if it's been scheduled for that. But spend 5 minutes on them. Ask them how it's going. If you've had multiple calls with them, you start to know how they sound. If something's off, ask them what's off, right? They're people
Mm-hmm.
too. Take a
Right.
second to acknowledge the person and then move on after that. And again, I know it's in a sales role, so people are like, well, how is it genuine? Blah, blah, blah. I'm in this role because I like interacting with people and helping people, right? I feel like I'm naturally empathetic. And so just connecting with and wanting to talk to them for them before starting anything else is just, a genuine part of what I like to do, right? But ask questions. Ask questions. That's really the biggest part of relationship building. I promise you, if you go have have a 30-minute conversation with someone new, right? You ask
Mm-hmm.
all the questions. So you talk for 20 to 30 seconds of that 30 minutes and they talk. They will leave that conversation and tell people what a good conversation they had with you. Like this person, such great conversation, such great conversation. All you did was ask them
Mm.
about themselves, right? So
So for a lot of us, like, people who maybe are just starting out, they're trying to network a bit. So let's say not just networking on LinkedIn or through social media, but would you suggest doing some like short coffee chats? What are some things that you would suggest to maybe simulate that or get some practice around that?
So yeah, one, short coffee chats are always good, right? Two, again, preparation. I will
Mm-hmm.
look for the title of the book that I was listening to on Audible, but something that's like called 99 Ways to Talk to Anybody or 101 Ways to
Mm-hmm.
Talk to Anybody. And it
I'll put in
goes
the show
through
notes.
the different types of questions, different things to ask people, how to learn about people. And again, preparing, right? Preparing is a big part of it. I may
Mm-hmm.
be, so situations one-on-one, I'll be more extroverted. With people I know, I may be a bit more outward, but in new large groups, I tend to be a little slow to get going. And
Right.
then sometimes I'm shy, go a little bit inwards. But listening to that audiobook on the way, having 30 or 40 questions just in the back of my head to throw out at any time to be able to get a conversation going with people, that made it easier. That way it's just, hey, you walk up, you're all there for a certain reason. So you make an introduction, let them know who you are, and then you can drop a question, right? So being prepared made it easier for me. Knowing the questions I was going to ask or having some in
Mm-hmm.
my pocket made it easier to network.
Do you have any and this is I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have any favorite questions that you like to ask sometimes?
Okay, as far as recruiting, this one is a little it's more about, I like to ask their reason for leaving, right? Because I find their
Mm,
reason for leaving gives me a very big insight into what's driving them, right?
right.
When someone says that, hey, I want a pay raise, and that's all, right? I understand that they're financially motivated, but I also understand that that's really the only motivation. Maybe they don't know what they're going for career wise before, besides like the raises, but it
Mm,
also tells me they're likely to chase it, right? So they may go to a client of yours, a year later they leave for another raise because that's all they're motivated by,
right.
right? And doesn't necessarily look good. But then some people, for example, I had a candidate in DC who was very motivated to actually take a job 50 miles away from her because her son, who was in a swimming club in South DC, had been promoted to a swimming club in North DC. And she couldn't realistically do the drive from her current job to where her son practiced. So she was like,
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to take her son out because he's a competitive swimmer. So she moved jobs and now works closer where her son practices in North DC. But again, I understood the motivation, right? There
Yeah,
was nothing that was going to stop her from finding what she wanted, right?
right.
She was extremely driven. But again, a reason for leaving, at least as far as recruiting goes, really gives me an insight into the person and what drives them.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And what's interesting, we've talked about this before, but I always find recruiting to be kind of like matchmaking because, especially in the kind of role that you're in, you're not just sourcing, you're also doing business development. So, if you're not as familiar, if somebody's listening, there are a lot of recruiters that may do one side of the development. It'll be they're sourcing the candidates or they are finding new business. So finding clients who need new talent, right? Because you're doing both sides of it, you really are acting kind of like a matchmaker. And the truth is there are very unique needs on either side, and you have to be able to navigate that. So what you were just saying, being able to read into questions, and understand the motivations, you'll better understand, okay, is this a good match for this particular company? Are they motivated in this certain ways? Are they looking for somebody who is motivated in this certain way? So in going into that, we're all building out our networks, we're building out our teams, we're building out our collaborators, even just our community in general, our friends, the people we care about. What do you think is what do you think are some important factors in like actually building? Maybe you can start with your team, but you can
Right.
even go into your tribe, your people, who you surround yourself with.
So as far as building, so I want to start the client first.
Yeah.
As far as building, one of the reasons that we're great as recruiters for team building
Yeah.
is external agency recruiters are great for team building is we are the only people who will ever know what's on the client's mind and the candidate's mind at the same
Mm,
time. A lot of
yeah,
times
that makes
internal
sense.
recruiters are still part of the company, so candidates aren't as forthright with them, right? They may not tell you about a bad experience they've had or not, right? So the agency recruiter's secret power is the fact that we know what's going on in everyone's head at all times. I will
Right.
know 2 steps before an offer is made if the client's going to make an offer and if the candidate's going to accept an offer, right?
Right.
A lot of times when I know one or the other isn't happening, I can then guide the person away. But again, as far as team building for companies, we understand what both sides are thinking. No one else in the hiring process can do that. No one in the hiring industry can. Internal recruiters can't because they're too closely linked to the company they're hiring for,
And
right?
especially the founders, if they're trying to do it, right? If they're your early stage, you're trying to build a
Right?
team, it's very, very tough to get the true motivation of somebody else, or you're picking somebody because they're in close proximity. They may be saying what you want to say, right? Or
Yeah. And
what they want to tell you, right?
exactly, people prepare for interviews. They know the basic questions and they know the answers, that they know how to give entrepreneurs and founders happy ears, because a lot of them go in and they're so pumped up to build their business, they're just listening for what they want. So if you tell them what
Right.
they want and they hear it, they'll say yes, right?
Right.
So people do prep for those. They know that and they understand that. And that's one thing you have to be careful of as well, right? It's when you're team building and when you're pulling people in, again, I sound like a broken record saying reverse engineer, but know the core components, the core aspects of what you want in your team members, right? And those are non-negotiables for your foundation. They can't, none of them can be a maybe. They are all solid must-haves, right? And so when you know your core, what you need, and you make those non-negotiables, you give yourself a strong foundation to build on. And like anything, right, the principles of life go everywhere. You build a poor foundation for a house, the house is going to crumble long term. You build a poor foundation for a business, it's not going to last, right? So in
Right.
team building, having those non-negotiables that you know are what you need to scale in the way you want, that's one of the most important parts of team building, right? The other part, and this is one that I have a tough time with in recruiting, but there is a gut feeling, there's intuition. You have
Mm-hmm.
to listen to your intuition, right? You can't, if you don't feel someone's the right fit, you shouldn't be bullied into hiring them or pushed into hiring them, right? And now also team building, hire by numbers, have 3 people, have a committee, because you have different perspectives. You have different
Right.
roles in the company, you have different perspectives, and you all have different understandings of what this individual role is going to do for you and benefit you, right?
Right. Right.
So having a committee to hire, right, that's a huge part of team building. So that way you have those different perspectives, make sure that all of you agree, right, or at least get the majority to move forward. So that's another big one, is having multiple perspectives when team building, because yeah, like I said, as a founder, I can be blinded because I have blinders on. I'm singularly focused in my growth and moving my company forward. And
Right.
sometimes I need someone to adjust me and be like, no, 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 you're seeing what you want to see. Like, look over here. This is what's happening, you know?
Let's say you are early, like you're an early entrepreneur, any kind of at any stage, and you're looking to build out your team, build out your community.
So first thing I'd say, um, drive your sales, drive your sales, and have the money to hire the right people. Raising your company is like raising your child, right? You're not gonna give it subpar food or subpar education or subpar attention, right? Just because you're like, oh, it's slightly cheaper.
Right.
Focus on sales, drive sales, just singular minded until you have the money to hire someone. Get your product or service out there. That is your only focus.
Right.
Get money in the bank and then start hiring those people that align with you, the experts that can then take over, and you don't have to move your focus, because when you
Right.
have to build that founding team, you're going to be, like I said, you'll be driving revenue. And now all of a sudden your focus is going to be taken away because you have to get 3 or 4 people in place, right? But
Right.
make sure they're experts so you can trust them and rely the advice you're giving, so you can focus on what you need to focus on. You can still spend a little bit of time to observe and make sure that what they're saying is true. But
Right.
yeah, initially driving the sales when you're a new founder, to have the money to hire experts to fill those other founding roles, is going to be key. That should be
Yeah.
the only thing you're focused on when you start, is having the money to bring someone, because a lot of founders are singular. You're good at one thing as well, right? That's the stage I'm at. I'm good at recruiting, but I don't necessarily know about scaling a business. So I'm
Right.
really just trying to drive sales and revenue so I can hire someone to come in and help me build the correct infrastructure as we go forward. I
Mhm.
understand it, but I am not the business expert to do it. And
Right.
when I have the money to, I will bring that person in.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, we all have our different skill sets and where we feel most comfortable, where we want to contribute. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you know, you're not hiring cheap, right? You're not just going because it's intimidating. It's almost better to try to educate yourself a little bit, do whatever you need to do, like you said, to drive those sales, to get a product out, to do the very minimum viable product, minimum viable service that you can do, even if it's like literally just picking up your phone and just trying to call people if you're in that service business, and just offer whatever you can, bespoke, whatever you need to do to just get the money starting to flow so that you can invest properly in the talent of an organization.
That's a good term though, because you are investing in the talent. It is an
So that's
investment.
what I was kind of
It
getting
is an
to, is I
investment.
find that like I'm really into the idea of investment in aspects of your process, and talent really is a backbone of the venture, right? So venture being, doesn't have to be a product, service, whatever it is. The backbone of the venture really is who is part of it. So a lot of people talk about personal brand. A lot of people talk about the things that you develop. And I've talked a lot about this on this podcast in different ways, talking about the founder themselves. But I want to talk about we've been talking about now those next steps of getting people. And I know I've personally been burned in the past by working with the wrong people. How do you find like the right talent contribute to the overall success of a company? And how has maybe your perspective changed over some time now that you're a founder and not just hiring for giant tech companies, right? Like you might have been in the past.
So, as an early stage founder, I have found that action is the best way to find out.
Yeah.
Fast action, which is a probably a nicer way of saying lots of mistakes quickly,
Yeah, truly.
because the more the more mistakes you make, the more you'll learn, or the more you try, the more you'll learn. Maybe they won't all
Mhm.
be mistakes. Maybe you just try quick, and you happen to have picked the right actions to take, right? But
Right.
it's just taking action, right? Taking action so you can fail quick, right? Just being agile is important in the beginning. I guess
Yeah.
agile is the term for that, right? So
Yeah. So if you're taking that action quickly, so how would you apply that to working with people? Would that be maybe trying on some collaborations for things? Would it be exploring new connections? How would you invite that in? Or maybe it's just focusing better on your process and seeing where the gaps are. How would you um, how would
so
you put that into the talent piece of it?
right. Again, it would come down to the preparation, and I think
Mm,
having a interview scorecard, right,
yeah.
would be
Yeah.
so again, maybe you're all asking different questions, but you have the same grading mechanism, right? So you
Right.
know what your questions are geared towards, and that, again, being prepared will help you avoid the mistake of making the wrong hire. A lot
Mm,
of times, clients that I've worked with who we've had to do a replacement for, you take a job order call with them, which is a call to get the job specs, right? Understand what they're looking for. And you talk to them, and it's like they don't have a clear understanding of what they need or what the role is or the responsibilities. So they think it's one thing. Halfway through the search, they change it. Then they hire someone and they're like, oh, actually, no, this isn't what they need. And then they have to go hire someone else, right?
right.
Really taking, again, doing the work beforehand, taking the time to understand the role, the responsibilities, and what you need will then allow you to focus on finding the right person, and then also give you the chance to listen to your intuition, because you don't have to worry about figuring out during the interview, is I'm sorry, I keep saying he, but are they meeting all these requirements that we have, right? Are
Right.
they a go-getter or whatever? And you're checking these boxes off, knowing that they're meeting them, and now you can still listen to your intuition instead of making up questions on the fly, or like people like to say, shooting from the hip, right?
Right.
And
Right.
then trying to ask questions to uncover certain answers, but then also trying to listen to your gut, right? It's too much going on. We can't really do more than one thing at a time. So that's why you prepare. So that way, where you're in those situations that you have to be doing a lot, you already know what you have to be doing in these certain situations. So the one thing you have to try and focus on there is easier to focus on.
And honestly, that's a really great point to make for people? Let's again say, because maybe some people, I wouldn't say they're not tuning out, but they're probably saying, I'm not quite there yet, but maybe I'm hiring contractors, right? It's still the same sort of a process. I'm hiring a contractor for this. I'm getting a copywriter for that. Even though there's somebody who's contracted, that's all they do. You still need to have some sort of an interview process, I would think, right? Something that you have something more structured, more prepared, so that you're not just blown away by a great sales presentation and it's not actually the right fit.
It's the work a lot of people don't like doing is the work you need to do to be successful. You
Yeah.
have to have your guides and know where you're going. You have to have your processes. You have to have your SOPs, right? Having
Mm-hmm.
those in place, right? That'll have your interview guides in there. That'll have your interview
Right.
scorecards, your questionnaires. It'll tell you this is the profile of the person we want. These are the qualities they need. You know, this is like the responsibilities they should have, and this is the other experience or whatnot. That work of preparing beforehand, the legwork, is what deters most people, or where most companies will probably, not most companies, but it deters a lot of people, and a lot of companies fail because they haven't done the initial work, right? That's the same in
Right.
hiring. They think, like you said, it's easy to be able to be agile when you're working with contractors, right? And some people be like, oh, we need a copywriter. And so they just go and hire a copywriter, but they haven't looked at the type of copy they need or the audience they're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like you said, using people off Fiverr or Upwork could be a really quick way to play with that, right? You're like, okay, I hired this type of person, this type of person, they're doing stuff. This person's content gets much better. This person's copy gets much better conversion. Now you build
Right.
your now you build your W-2 profile for a full-time employee based off of the information you've got in that research phase. And now you
Right.
can hire a full-time employee based on, hey, we need someone who can mimic this. This is what's been driving us, right? But you had a
Yeah.
very good point in, don't don't fully commit during that research phase either, right?
And I would say even back it up a step. And this is where kind of my space is, even compared to yours, is really take a look at your process, detail out your SOPs in a certain way. Like I've done this recently with producing a podcast, every single step, looking at it and seeing where are my gaps, what are some things that I can experiment and try with, do it with myself first. Maybe that next step is, like you said, finding a couple contractors, play around and see, get some work done and see what performs well or not well. And then at that, when you're ready for that stage, go to that full time, as opposed to, you know, spend a boatload of money for a huge package of something, or you're hiring somebody, God forbid, where you have to now then deal with a lot of the politics of like keeping somebody on, not keeping somebody. And then, maybe you've kind of stretched yourself a bit thin, or your team a bit thin. So that makes a whole lot of sense. And, I think it's always good to continue to really look at yourself as a founder too, and how you contribute to the culture, right? Like, what am I doing? What am I doing in my own personal development, my own growth as a CEO, as a CTO, whatever role that you're taking in your workplace, and seeing where can I do better? What can I do? Where am I showing up? And then using that kind of empathy to apply to that next space.
Right. No, that's true.
So I thought we were going to get more into a lot of personal stuff, but I love that this has been just really value packed with your unique insight. And I feel like we talk about this a bit with each other because we're both entrepreneurs, but not in the way that we have here. So I'm really grateful for that. But I do want to ask you, I ask this to everybody, and there's no correct definition, but I want to get your perspective of, how would you define everyday innovation for yourself, for your clients, whatever, however you want to answer this.
Okay. So everyday innovation, right? I would really define as adaptability. It
Mm,
is everyday innovators are the people who continue moving forward, right? Everyday
yeah.
innovation is continual growth. It's like CI/CD, right? Continuous integration, continuous development integration, or whatever. Everyday
Yeah.
innovation is taking the little changes, taking action, applying them, right? And moving forward,
Yeah.
because where we are today is built on what we did yesterday, but moving forward there's changes, and that's everyday innovation, is the adaptability to continue moving forward and implement the new with the old to keep making progress.
That's perfect. And you've clearly demonstrated that through everything that you've done and the way that you approach everything that you do. And the last question that I have is there something that you would like to pose to the audience or someone listening that they can respond back
All
to?
right.
I like putting something like that out there so that either you can get feedback as well, or people feel called to, share whatever it is you'd like them to share.
So I guess we're talking to a lot of entrepreneurs and early stage founders here. So what I really want to ask them is, are you more afraid of failure or are you more afraid of success?
Mm,
And the reason I ask that, and they jump to saying, oh, well, obviously failure, I want you to look at where you were at this point last year with where you are today and look at the progress you've made. And then ask yourself, why are you in that position? Have you made
mm,
progress? Have you gone forward and now you're 10 steps further than when you were? Or are you in the exact same spot? Right? Uncover that core, right? What drives you, failure or success? But yeah, figure that out. Are you more afraid of failure or are you more afraid of success? If you understand that, I promise you that that driving factor will help contribute to getting you even further forward.
I love that. And I think I'm going to add one more question, just going kind of circling back to a little bit of the personal. I know there's actually, funny enough, there's some new parents in the audience and maybe young parents who have businesses as well. What have you noticed has changed maybe in your process a little bit, or the way that you approach work after having a baby? So we have an 8-month-old. I'm just curious from the dad's perspective. I'm curious to see how it's affected your process or the way you think about your business.
I used to feel that recruiting or my work was the most important thing in the world.
Yeah.
Having a baby, I know people are like, oh, it changes your priorities, but it does. One day I was sitting there and I was just looking at her. And I remember for the longest time always thinking like, all right, what am I doing? What's my purpose? Well, I like helping
Mm,
people, but my purpose is to be a dad, right? To be a husband. And
yeah.
having a baby has allowed me to realize that I'm more than the company I'm building or I'm more than
Mm,
the income I bring in, but I'm a father, right? I'm here to interact with someone, to give them experiences. And
right.
having those kids have allowed me, or having my daughter has allowed me to decompress when the clock hits 5 in the evening, where I used to be stressed all night, continue working, waiting for the next day.
Yeah.
It's allowed me to separate life and work and then disconnect when work's done and then go and really enjoy the hours of life I have been able to buy back so far until I have all of the ones I want back.
And I'm sure that you've seen a lot of your own clients and your own candidates that you've worked with start to shift those priorities and look at what's important there as well. Because I know with a lot of recruiters, I'm sure you've seen in the past, they're going for the people who work the hardest, who will work all the long hours, but that's not necessarily what's sustainable or is even the right fit anymore.
Right.
It's the people who, bring the value to the table and know they understand their boundaries too. I love that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on. I've had a really fun time. This is really, really helpful. I think it will be immensely valuable for people listening. And yeah, make sure everyone to check out the show notes. We'll put something really cool together for you relating to this conversation. And thank you, Adrian. Where's the best place? Where would you like people to check you out or follow you? Either for content or if they're interested in continuing a relationship forward, either interested in recruiting and or interested in recruiting for their business.
LinkedIn's going to be the best platform to contact
Yeah.
me. I'll share my profile with Jordan. It's just my first name, last name when you're looking me up. But LinkedIn is where I'm most active just because while I'm recruiting during the day, I have it open if I have to
Hmm.
talk to candidates or clients. But yeah, if you'd like to connect, ever just chat, anything, yeah, LinkedIn's going to be the best spot.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.